We're going to talk today about you're not getting your money's worth from Office 365. First, just a real quick note for those of you that are not AMP customers. AMP is a business and technology consultancy, and we serve small and medium businesses from 20 to 500 PCs in size. And we help you implement a proven IT strategy that aligns with your business goals. And by doing so, I believe we can really help remove a lot of your IT challenges. And once the IT challenges go away, you can focus on better serving your customers and your employees as you grow your business. We find that our clients can achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments than those that are not implementing an IT strategy. So that's enough about us. Let's get into the topic at hand here. When you take a technology and you adopt it, you absolutely always get business value. And what's interesting with Office 365 is that when we meet a new prospect, more often than not, they've purchased their Office 365 license subscription for the Office suite, the old productivity suite of Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, and Word, those kinds of applications. But there's a ton of other unlocked value that you're not taking advantage of. And I would dare say 75% of the applications that you're actually paying for, you're not using. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So our agenda is kind of diving into some of these applications that perhaps you're not using right now. And I believe, and we have seen, that we can help you increase productivity and help you collaborate and really allow you to free your employees from being straddled to an office PC. So their cell phone, their laptop, even a tablet as they're watching a Netflix movie. All of those devices now allow them to work from anywhere at any time with any device. And at the same time, we're not going to give up any security features to protect you and your data. And then at the end, we're going to share a little bit about total cost of ownership. And I think you'll be shocked how inexpensive it is to unlock some of this value. So there's 2 versions of Office 365. When we meet most prospects, they're using Office 365 licensing that was started about 8 years ago by Microsoft. 2 years ago, Microsoft started offering Microsoft 365 licensing as opposed to Office 365 licensing. And the Microsoft 365 licensing typically costs the same amount as an Office 365 subscription. However, you get a ton more applications. So the first thing we'll do when we meet a client is sit down and take a look at, hey, what subscription are you actually purchasing? And are you getting the best bang for the buck money-wise? So today, we're going to be focusing primarily on what you would get out of a Microsoft 365 license. This is an example of some of the applications, and believe it or not, this is half of the list of the applications that come along with a Microsoft 365 subscription. And you can see here, this is nuts, how much value there is here that's probably not implemented on your part. The first thing we're going to talk about from an implementation perspective is when we meet prospects, many of them, because of COVID, have already implemented Teams, but they might have not fully implemented it. They certainly haven't implemented it with a security thought in mind. And I can tell you that I believe Teams is the most important application Microsoft has created ever. And I would say that even over Windows. The level of what you can do with Teams is astonishing, and we're going to just scratch the surface on it today. But it provides a lot of value, particularly when you have a workforce that's all separated. Some people have businesses where everyone's working from a home right now. Some people have businesses where they're essential and everyone's in an office, and many businesses have people scattered all over at job sites or customer locations, you name it. Teams is the application that brings everyone together. To take a look at Teams, the first thing you get when you turn on Teams is you get a very rich video conferencing and an instant messaging platform. And this is literally a screenshot right now from Teams that I'm showing you. And the fidelity of the video and the audio quality is astonishing. And All you need is, a modern PC that has a camera on it, or put a camera on top of your monitor, a separate camera, and some internet. To do this only requires a couple kilobit of internet, and everyone has way more than that from a bandwidth perspective. So you don't need big internet circuits to make this work. And the minute you turn this on, everyone in your company that has a team subscription and a PC gets this level of video and audio conferencing. It's included in the product, and compare that to WebEx or Zoom or Slack, where you have to pay to get this kind of fidelity. So it's very, very powerful way to get people connected. But there's other things also in the team subscription here of value. The next thing is you get personal one-on-one chat or instant messaging, so that I can literally chat with anyone in the company one-on-one. Only that person and myself see the chat. No one else in the company sees the chat. And you can bring more than one person into a chat. So if you want to chat with three people, invite three people in, and then the three of you can chat back and forth. All of this is recorded for posterity's sake, so you can always go back and look at it. And it's very easy for me, if I were out at a client or at a meeting, to come back to chat here, and anything that I have missed will have red dots on it. So it's very fast for me to get caught back up on any threads where people are chatting with me that I might have missed up to this point. You can see over on the top left there that the chat button has a number 1 there, meaning that there's one chat that I have not read so far. So it's very easy to get caught up. Another neat thing about Teams is it lets you create teams of people that work together. And in some businesses, that might be based on projects. In some other businesses, that might be based in function. At AMP, we have a server desktop team, and they're all together. We also have a Cisco infrastructure networking team that's together. We have a management team, and all of those people can see any instant message that gets typed in there at the same time. So it's very easy for someone to come in and ask a question about a client, and everyone else on the team sees the message and can throw their 2 cents in and respond very quickly. This particular part of Teams really helps you connect your business and your employees together no matter where they're located. Another neat thing about Teams is a product called Power BI that lets us throw data up on a screen so anyone can look at the data at any given time. And at AMP here, we're very key performance indicator or KPI oriented, and we track all sorts of things. How quickly does an engineer work on a ticket? How many tickets has an engineer closed in a day? How long is a customer waiting to get responded to? All that data is shown, and what's neat about this is that it helps you stack rank your employees so they can take a look at how they're doing compared to everyone else on their team. And we can configure this to literally be whatever you want. This could be sales in a month, a new clients acquired, you name it. Anything you can count could be displayed in here. Another neat feature is the ability in Teams to find out the presence of your employees. And what I mean by presence is their availability. What are they doing? You can see my picture here in the top left corner with the red dot showing that I'm in a call. But Jason Johnson to the right of me has a green check mark. He's available right now, and you could IM him or you could call him. And this is, if you go down 3, you can see Mike Carroll's completely offline with an X next to him. So this is very handy for anyone in the company to, before I call anyone now, I go over and take a look at this. I don't want to interrupt anyone. And you can also see, hey, is someone at lunch right now? Has someone called out sick today? So you can very quickly look at your team and kind of see what's going on or what's happening. Very, very handy. Another neat part of Teams is it allows you to make phone calls. So Teams can be a phone system. Now, it is an optional addition, but if you're in your business right now, if you have a phone system where you used to have literally desktop sets on every desk and very kind of an old school phone system, this is kind of a modern cloud-based phone system. And I have my own phone number. I can dial anyone I want within the company or outside the company. Outside phone calls can come to me. And when they come to me, they can hit my desktop, my laptop, my cell phone, you name it. Very easy to stay connected to the outside world. You can see here that I can have not only a speed dial of my own employees, but I can have a speed dial of all my contacts. It offers voicemail, as well as there's a history button there where I can see people that have called me that maybe I've missed. So that kind of gives you a sense about Teams. That would absolutely be something to take a look at to implement. And I think I would want to share with you just a quick story. Who would have ever dreamed that COVID was going to hit us? And certainly I didn't. And I would tell you all, because we're an IT support company, I always felt I'm kind of an old school guy. I've been doing this forever. I'm a guy that still has a telephone on my desk. Believe it or not, I still have an adding machine on my desk. I have a Rolodex on my desk. So definitely an old school guy. And I felt like supporting IT is a team sport. It really requires people to be next to one another. If Matt's having trouble solving a problem, he could tap my shoulder and ask me a question about it. And as long as we're all kind of in the same office and close together, it makes it easier to support at one another and support our customers. So the minute the governor shut us down and we had to have all our employees start working from home, I was freaked out, honestly. And we already had Teams deployed. We weren't really using it heavily. And the minute everyone went home and all our employees went home, we instantly turned up Teams, brought up the channels, and I was just thrilled to see in 2 days, every one of our employees was completely IMing and chatting in their windows. They were heavily using Teams to ask one another questions. I think it saved our business. And I was really, really worried about it before we implemented Teams. So, just speaking personally and from personal experience, I think Teams saved our business when COVID hit. The next thing I want to talk about is migrating your on premise Exchange server up to Exchange Online. Microsoft offers that as part of your subscription. So, are you aware right now, when you bought your Office 365 subscription, that it includes for free already Exchange Online? Perhaps today, if you were like us before we did this migration, you had an Exchange server. You were probably upgrading that Exchange server every 4 or 5 years. You buy a new server, you buy a new copy of Exchange, you pay someone to implement it, and then once it's implemented, you have to care and feed for it. You have to patch it. You have to take care of the security of it. You have to worry about a redundant power supply. You have to worry about backing it up. Well, imagine if you contemplated completely migrating your email off-prem and up to Microsoft Exchange Online. It's not hard to do. It's fairly inexpensive to do. And once you do it, you're done. You never have to do it again. So I think this is such a valuable opportunity to save money in the long run. And remember, the minute you take something out of your building and you hand it over to Microsoft, well, now Microsoft has to worry about the backups. Now Microsoft has to worry about the hardware that it's running on. Microsoft worries about the updates. All of those things, all of that licensing, all of that cost, all goes away. And you never have to pay for it again. So I think migrating your email off of Exchange and up into Exchange Online is really compelling. Why buy another server again, honestly, when this is included in your subscription? The next thing to contemplate is migrating your file server up to the cloud. And it's much like Exchange. We would buy file servers here every 4 or 5 years. We're taking a look at upgrading some of our critical server applications in here, and to buy 2 new servers. Matt shared with me yesterday would cost $51,000. So that's 2 pieces of hardware. Nothing's deployed on them yet. We're not using them yet at $51,000. Isn't that nuts? So, when you're ready to upgrade your file server, you might want to contemplate migrating away from on-prem and into the cloud. And the file server in the cloud from Microsoft is called SharePoint Online, and it comes with OneDrive. And what's neat about a OneDrive and a SharePoint migration is I used to have a Mulvey share, and it would be slash Mulvey and then all of my folders. And that Mulvey share left my file server on-prem, and that Mulvey share went right into OneDrive. So when I click on OneDrive right now, I see my Mulvey share the way I used to see it with all my folders. It's easy to take data in and out of it, but it all gets backed up automatically up to SharePoint Online, up in Microsoft's Azure cloud. I never have to worry about it again. I never have to worry about losing a file again. I'm never buying another file server. I'm never buying another operating system. I don't have to buy Veeam to back it up. I don't have to worry about patching it or worrying about security issues with the server. So to me, this is a no-brainer. Much like migrating email up to Azure, I also feel like moving OneDrive and SharePoint is really a great idea. And I think some people have businesses where some of their data needs to be highly protected. Needs to be, you need to worry about it. We have a large nursing home community where they literally have a hospital on-prem, and protecting HIPAA patient data is very critical. Migrating your file server off-prem and up into Azure, we can add a level of data security that we could never provide for a file server on-prem. And this would be true for other industries. If you're in the banking, if you're a federal credit union or a federally regulated bank, moving your data up into the cloud, we can have a level of data security that's unparalleled compared to your on-prem security. We can set up SharePoint Online to be looking for account numbers, to be looking for social security numbers, anything that you would consider kind of private and something you would worry about. And then we can literally plug in rules to control where this data goes and who sees the data. Let me show you an example of that. So we can, once you move your data off a file server on-prem and up to SharePoint, we can really lock down the data in the cloud. And one of the ways we can lock the data down is, let's take a look at this first. You can decide how to share a file. Do you want to share on the left here? You can see how we could share a file with anyone, or share a file with people in your organization, or maybe just someone who currently has access, or even specific person. When A&P sends out proposals to our customers, we click the set expiration date and only let that file be alive out in the wild for 30 days, because typically our hardware pricing, if you don't accept the quote in 30 days, the price is no longer valid with the person we're representing, because hardware prices are such commodities and change so quickly. If you take a look over on the right here on the screen, you can see that we can set up rules in SharePoint Online. So when one of your employees tries to share some data that you consider proprietary, or maybe it's intellectual property and you don't want it to leave the building, we can send a message. And you can see in red there, your organization doesn't allow sharing with users from this domain. Please contact your IT department for help. So you could tell us, what's the data you don't want out of the building? What's the data you don't want on a company laptop, an employee laptop, or an employee cell phone? And we can completely control and lock down what is shared and what isn't shared. Very, very powerful. And I've seen employees or employers in the past where maybe they had a rocky relationship with an employee that was leaving, and the employee stole customer data, or maybe stole pricing information. And by migrating up to SharePoint, we can really control that kind of data so it never leaves your organization. And frankly, we can even go a step further. And when we set up anyone that has SharePoint Online, when we set up your cell phone, we can set it up such that when the employee leaves the company, we literally can just push a button and in 30 seconds wipe their cell phone of all company email, any data files they might have, or any application access that they might have to cloud apps. So it's a great way to very quickly kind of erase the phone of all corporate data, but we don't touch their own contacts, we don't touch their text messages. We just go after the company data and get it off of their cell phone. And that all happens remotely. The next thing that is very, very important, I believe, to implement, and I would dare say this would be the first thing I would implement if you were talking to us, and that is to implement enterprise security. Um, the level of security risk is so high today, and there is so many people trying to attack your domain today that implementing enterprise level security is perhaps the most important thing I can talk to you about. And you really need to get end-to-end protection, kind of an umbrella over everything IT security wise. And we do that by implementing Microsoft's complete um, level of security, which I'm going to take you through here quickly. Um, but by doing this, we can lock you down in a way that when the bad guys come knocking at your door, they're going to immediately see that you have done things to protect your company that would make it hard for them to break in and encrypt your data or steal your data. And they're just going to move on. Criminals, they're lazy. They want to look for easy prey, not hard prey. And so, making it hard for someone to attack you is so important. And unfortunately, back in the day when the internet started up, everyone thought all I need is a good firewall. The whole idea was about perimeter security, protect the internet from the outside world, and we're good. But once the bad guys figured out that, all right, I'll just send an email right through that firewall into the inside and use that email to trick someone into giving me their user ID and password. Well, all the security software in the world can't protect us from one of your employees giving up their user ID and password. The minute that happens, the bad guys got access to your network and your applications and data, much the same way the employee did. So what can we do to really lock things down? That's what I'm going to take you through now. Microsoft calls this zero trust security. And so what's zero trust mean? Well, there's really three pillars to zero trust. The first pillar is verify explicitly. The second pillar, use least privilege access. And the third pillar is always assume there's a breach taking place. So I'm going to take you through this. And the whole idea here is to get locked down so the bad guys, even with the user ID and password, cannot gain access to your data. So the first thing from an identity perspective, well, how do we kind of verify you explicitly? Well, you see the fingerprint there in the top left under identities. And on my laptop, I have a fingerprint reader. So unless someone cut my finger off, if they had my user ID and password, they do not have my fingerprint. And so even with a user ID and password, they're not gaining access. On my cell phone or on my PC where I don't have a fingerprint reader, I use multi-factor authentication. So the minute I type in my user ID and password, Microsoft sends out a multi-factor authentication on my cell phone to approve. So obviously the bad guys, even if they had my user ID and password, they don't have my cell phone. So these are ways to get explicitly make sure you know who's actually knocking at the door to come into the organization. But we take it a step further than that. It's not just done at an identity level, it's also done at a device level. So we memorize using zero trust security. We learn what are the valid employee devices, what are the valid company laptops, what are the valid cell phones. So you could have a user ID and password. You could even have a valid multi-factor authentication, but if you're not a device in our inventory list, you're not getting in. So again, this is how explicitly we can control access. And there's really cool things that take place once you have this. But by locking down identities, locking down devices, we can protect your company from who's getting in the front door. Now, once they're in the door, the next thing we want to do is consider using least privilege access. So we're going to classify the data using SharePoint Online, which spoke about before. And there's some data, if you're in the finance department, I'm going to let you see accounting data. If you're in the HR department, I'm going to let you see payroll data. But if you're an engineer that works typically at clients on site, you're not going to have access to accounting. You're not going to have access to HR data, even though you're a valid employee and allowed to come into the front door. So we can control who sees what data. We can control even what applications they see. And maybe you've heard of something called shadow IT. And shadow IT is back in the day, I would be handed a laptop, and I would load the games I like to play. I would load the applications that I want on my laptop, but they weren't corporate laptop or weren't corporate applications. Well, today we can literally control what gets loaded from an application perspective on company-owned devices. So, and this is our ability to stop shadow IT, because if one of your employees is loading a piece of software that's a gateway to bad criminals getting access to that laptop, we want to shut that down. We want to control that. And finally, infrastructure and network. We want to also lock those down. I'll give you an example of this. And these are things that we could not do if you had bought a brand new 2019 operating system and put that on a brand new server, and you were running a brand new domain from Microsoft on-prem. Most of the things I'm showing you here are not supported on-premise. These are all things that happen in Active Directory up in the cloud. These are all things that are supported with your Office 365 subscription. And we can lock down from an infrastructure and network perspective who gains access to your network from a geo perspective. If your company, like ours, most of your employees or all your employees are operating in the Philadelphia area, if someone tries to log in from Colorado, that's going to be challenged. Microsoft's going to throw that out and go, wait a minute, this guy's got the right user ID, the right password. He even has his fingerprint or multi-factor, but he's logging in. It looks like he has the right device, but he's logging in from Colorado. What's going on here? He just logged in from Glenside 2 minutes ago. And there's no way without time travel that we could log in, be at both Glenside in Colorado 2 minutes later. So Microsoft immediately looks at that as assuming breach, assume something's wrong, and would stop that access. Or someone trying to get in from China or London, where you never had an employee over there. These are also considered assumed breach, and that would be blocked. So the level of lockdown here, and frankly, we're locking down, but we're not hassling your users. Once they do multi-factor in the morning, or once I do my fingerprint in the morning, all of my apps get turned on. Everything, my devices are all turned on. I'm not constantly hassled for the rest of the day. So once in, it's very easy and doesn't hassle your users. So there's always that balance between, you want to be really locked down, but you don't want to hassle your users and make it hard for them to do their work. So for me, this is super important. This would be the first thing I would implement as part of your subscription. It's all in there. It's all paid for. It's just a matter of getting it implemented. And once it's implemented, then we can take a look at what's called your Microsoft 365 Secure Score. And as you implement multi-factor, as you implement conditional access and geography access, and as we learn what devices are valid devices in your network, you can see here you might have a maximum score of 440. When we typically meet new prospects, their secure score in their tenancy is in the 20 to 30 range, nowhere near 440. And as we start to turn these things on, multi-factor, we start to learn what physical devices you have with a product called Intune. As these things get turned on, your score goes up. And we'll send you a report every month of what your score is, actual score, versus the maximum score. And most of our customers, you never really hit the maximum score because as you get near the top of the list here, you do start to hassle your users. But taking your score from 20 up to 400, that's such an order of magnitude higher that when the bad guys knock at your door, they're going to recognize you have all this stuff turned on, and they're just going to move on and look for easier prey. So I could not highlight this more, that in today's world, where I hear, because I'm a managed service provider in a peer group of other managed service providers, every time I meet with the group, and I'm sitting in a room with about 600 other managed service providers, I hear over and over the sad stories of a company being attacked. Ransomware it gets into their building. Once the ransomware is in the building, it encrypts all their files. Once their files are all encrypted, the bad guys ask for a Bitcoin to unencrypt the files. A Bitcoin just 6 months ago was $19,000. A Bitcoin, I think, now is worth $40,000. So at a minimum, you're paying $40,000 to unencrypt your files. And if you're a larger company, you could be spending millions of dollars to get the encryption key to unencrypt your files. So the hassle of that, the heartache of that, that is not a conversation I want to have with any of my customers on, oh my gosh, you might have to pay to get your data back. So you want to avoid that. And one of the great takeaways from this is not only do you want to implement this level of enterprise security, but you probably also want to be taking a look at what does your cybersecurity insurance policy look like. You want to make sure you have a relatively low deductible and a relatively high level of insurance. But by telling the insurance company that you have this stuff turned on, I can assure you they'll see that you're implementing best practices, and your premiums could be a lot less expensive than the company that's not doing any of this. All right, let's move on and take a look at the total cost of ownership over 5 years. Quickly, if like I had told you before, if you have to buy a server every 4 or 5 years for exchange for file server, if you had to buy a new phone system maybe every 10 years, you know, the on-prem cost to do that, it's not inexpensive. And the cost to not only rent Microsoft 365, Office 365, but to operate it is much less expensive. I dare say less than half. And in many customers, it's 25% of what they're spending for on-prem IT. So any way you shake this, you're going to get a lot more value out of the current subscription you're already paying for, but you're also going to get a lot more value out of it. So the benefit of implementing Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams, and a Teams phone system is, look at these pictures. These are all people working from their homes. You can literally work anywhere, and you could do it on a cell phone, a laptop, your home PC, even your tablet. It simply doesn't matter. You don't have to have Windows on these devices. Teams can be loaded onto almost anything today and is your gateway to access everything. So I would say there's great business value in what Microsoft calls the modern workplace. And the modern workplace for Microsoft is essentially turning on everything in your Office 365 subscription. Why don't you contemplate moving from a capital-based expense where you're buying hardware and software every couple of years to an operating expense model where you're renting an Office 365 subscription and you've moved all your data to the cloud and you never have to worry about it again. Never pay for another server. Never buy more hardware or software or worry about refresh projects, and just save all that money. Get rid of any third-party products that you have to pay, like antivirus or malware subscriptions that you're hassling right now. When you switch to Teams, you don't need your firewall for VPN access anymore because you're literally going to just connect right natively on internet right over to Microsoft. Microsoft encrypts the data on your laptop. They encrypt the data as it transits from your laptop into their data center. And then if you store any data in their data center, at rest, it's encrypted. So all the way along the food chain of your data, the data is always encrypted. And I have seen this with my own eyes because we've done all this at A&P. When the minute you implement all of these things, you get better employee efficiency and you're getting better productivity. And I can tell you, I think my customers really like Teams. I have primarily a millennial workforce, and I watch them fool around in chat, and I think they really enjoy it. I don't think they view this as kind of a hassle, but rather as a good thing. So how do you get going with all this? Well, it's easy. You can call us. You can check out the website. We talk a lot about this on our website, and we'd be happy to sit and just talk. Or we can also provide you with a free Microsoft tenancy assessment and kind of take a look at where you are today versus the best practices I just shared with you. Or we could sit down and really take a look at just your licensing. Or do you have the old Office 365 licenses and you'd like to migrate over to the newer Microsoft 365 licenses? We could help make some recommendations and let you know what the best option is for that. And of course, if you want to take it a step further, we can implement and help you adopt the security stack. And then after you get security turned on, what do you want to do next? Is it Teams, or maybe it's Exchange, or maybe it's SharePoint, or maybe it's the phone system? It really doesn't matter what order you implement them in. We'll do it at your rate, and we'll do it in the order you like. We don't really care. So super easy to do this. And remember, you pay for a project to move to the cloud once, and then you're done. There's never another hardware refresh. There's never another cloud migration. Once you're up there, you're up there. So are you ready to get your money's worth from your Office 365 subscription? You can schedule 30 minutes to talk to us if you're not a client. And if you are a client, let us know. And we love to do the work from anywhere assessment. Or we can even turn on Microsoft 365 for a month and let you try it. For those of you who are clients, you already know how to get a hold of us. And if you're a prospect listening to us today, just reach out, send us an email at connect@amp.net or give us a holler. We'd love to hear from you.